Welcome to Customer Love Stories, a podcast where we investigate why certain brands are loved or not loved by their customers. I'm your host, Robi Ganguly, CEO and co-founder of Apptentive. For those of you who don't know, Apptentive is a Seattle-based voice of the customer solution. But that's not what this podcast is about. Today, we're talking about customer love with Kat Simpson, the Associate Creative Director of Strategy at Tether, a Seattle-based multidisciplinary creative agency. Welcome, Kat. Thanks so much for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course, yeah, happy to be here. So, as you mentioned, I'm Associate Creative Director of Strategy at Tether. I've had like a long journey to get here. Started out working in advertising in New York City, where I worked with a lot of brands in both in the campaign and the brand space. My love of the outdoors led me to move to Seattle after a couple of years, where I kind of worked in branding and design for a really long time, switched over to strategy for a while. And now I'm kind of doing a hybrid of both: brand strategy, which, centers a lot around making consumers fall in love with brands. And then also doing a lot of design as well.
That's awesome. And you said something there that's really interesting to me, which is brand strategy is about making consumers fall in love with brands. And that's a lot of what we're trying to understand is like how you can do that proactively, how you can create it as opposed to how it just happens by accident. Yeah. So the way I like to start this is asking you something personal, like who or what are you a fan of?
Yeah, I'm a fan of a lot of different things. I see in my life, some people are fans where they have one thing and they devote their life to it. Like think of like a deadhead and they follow them around. And I'm a fan of a lot of different things. So one thing being sports, I've got my Eagles hat on. I'm a huge Philadelphia sports fan, Penn State sports fan. I do love some Seattle sports teams as well. Huge fan of music and musicians. I religiously create playlists. I rank albums throughout the year. Like anytime a new album comes out, I have like a ranking system for it. So really big fan of music. And then brands. I'm a huge proponent of brands, especially outdoor brands, like the brand Chaco's, Cotopaxi. Recently I've become a huge stark raving fan of pit vipers randomly. So yeah.
And let's pick one of those.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Chaco's.
Yeah.
Why are you a fan of Chaco's? What really gets you going about Chaco's?
I mean, I think the first way that I kind of became associated with them was they kind of were the shoe that you wore if you wanted to portray to people that you were outdoorsy. If you were walking around in Chaco's, everyone knew oh yeah, they hike, they camp. And it was that signal. It's kind of that virtue signaling of I'm going to tell you what I believe in without you having to ask the question. And so that was kind of something I saw when I first moved to Seattle from New York, was oh my gosh, everyone wears Chaco's. And then I drank the Kool-Aid after a while. My partner specifically, he only wears Chaco's for, I would say, 4 years. He didn't own a closed-toed shoe. It was just really a personality trait. And through time, we ended up getting a dog, and we named our dog Chaco because we were so obsessed with this brand. We were so obsessed with being these outdoorsy people and kind of encompassing that lifestyle in every way. And we wanted our dog to go on all these hikes and camping trips with us. So Chaco became his name.
That's awesome. And I think, you're talking about something that I think we've heard on this podcast from several people, which is, when you're a fan of something, part of the reason is about how it makes you feel about yourself. Part of it is touching something that resonates with an identity. So you said virtue signaling, but there's this aspect of you want to be outdoorsy. You moved here to Seattle, right? Specifically because you wanted to get more outdoorsy. So there's this piece of your identity that Chaco's lights up for you. It brings it up to the surface. Is that right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So what does that mean when you're out in the world and people come into contact with you wearing Chaco's? Do you have interactions as a result of that are influenced in that way?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had some people, because I guess there's a really big Tevas or Tevas, however you want to pronounce that, Chaco's war going on that I was not aware of. And right. I didn't know you had to pick a side, but I very clearly picked a side. And now I'm aware. But I've had people kind of be oh, you're clearly Team Chaco's. I have Chaco's patches on my jacket and I have stickers on my water bottle. So it's, I think that's a big thing. But there's other brands that if I'm wearing like a brewery shirt, for instance, and I'm in Fred Meyer, someone inevitably will come up and, ask about that. So.
Yeah, yeah. So then there's this signaling, right? The aspect of your brands are represented in what you're wearing. There's some signaling so people can interact. It's something they can latch onto.
Yeah.
And then you're also talking about the anti-signaling. So if like somebody's like a Teva fan, it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I see you're on this other side, right? So like, what do you like as a fan, right? You said you're a fan of a bunch of things. What do you like aside from naming your dog, which I think tells us, like when you think about it, are you an evangelist?
Mm.
Are you like a feedback giver? Are you like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would definitely say I'm more of an evangelist. There are times where there are certain categories that I can be what I'd like to call like an ooh shiny fan, where I'm a really big fan of something for a while, but then something new comes along that sparks my fancy. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to jump to that. But there are certain things, Chaco's being one of them, where I am an evangelist forever. I don't really often give too much feedback. Like when I'm in and I've had a positive experience and it's positive, that brand has positively impacted my life, like I'm in, like I almost can get blinders on sometimes, or I just like love everything they do. They could put out something that I don't have a need for in my life and I will buy it,
Yeah, yeah. So let's keep on the Chaco's train. Tell me more about the brand, like what it's like and what it stands for and how they run their business. Because I'm imagining if you named your dog after them and you buy a lot of the stuff, you kind of know more about the company than maybe the average person. So tell us more, tell our audience more about Chaco's.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're, one of the first things that made me really love them, just from a product perspective, is they're really sturdy, they're really durable, they're really reliable. They're versatile. Like I can wear them in water, I can wear them on rocky hikes. I think that's really exciting. And then they allow for a level of personal expression. As a woman with a larger foot, so odd thing about me, I can't often find shoes that have bright colors, and I love bright colors. And they have such a wide range of colors and patterns. Now they have a customizable feature. Like I feel like they're always kind of going with the trends as well, which is something I really care for in a brand. And then from a values perspective, I will say this: they care a lot about the environment. And I care a lot about the environment, which is why I'm wearing these Chacos, and knowing that they give back to a lot of environmental stewardship programs. They do the best they can to have sustainable materials, and they keep working in that way. Like that just makes me keep coming back time after time.
Got it. That makes sense. Is there anything that Chaco's has done that upset you or disappointed you? You said for sure that you wear blinders, so I get that aspect, but have they done things where you've actively said, okay, well, you messed up, but it's okay because I love you?
I don't know that I can recall a time where I've seen that. I follow them on social media, see a lot of what they do. But yeah, but it might just be my blinders too. My
Well, one of
blind
the
love.
questions I like to ask is, what's the craziest thing you've done as a fan? But I think that answer must be naming your dog Chaco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I right in that?
I would say so. I have not gotten to the point where I've gotten a logo tattooed. I've talked about it, but I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay. And are you a tattoo person for context? Like, do you like
Yeah.
tattoos, or is it like part of the reason why is you would never get a tattoo?
I have a tattoo here. This is an ode to a trip I went on with some friends. I've got a bunch of other tattoos, a lot smaller ones, but yeah, I've talked about maybe like a Rubens bruise tattoo one day. We'll see.
Oh, all right. I love Rubens. Rubens is deliciousness.
Yeah.
So the craziest thing you've done as a Chacos fan
Yeah.
is naming your dog Chaco.
Yeah.
And you and your partner had to come to an agreement around this. Was it easy? Was it obvious? Like, talk to me about the process of just deciding on the name for your dog being after a brand you love.
Yeah, it was easy. That was like the given name. We had some other ones that were more standard names for dogs. And we talked to some friends, and some friends tried to talk us out of it. Like, you guys are crazy. Like, you should not, this brand is not a personality trait. You don't work for them. Like, what are you thinking? No one's going to get it. And we just kind of said, this feels right to us. Like, it's just who we are.
Okay. So it was like very much you were aligned in that way.
Yeah.
And were you the stronger Chaco fan, or was he? I mean, you said for 4 years he basically only wore those, like
Yeah.
hasn't worn closed toe shoes. Like who's the bigger Chaco fan?
Oh, Lucas is very much the bigger Chaco fan for
Oh,
sure.
wow. Okay.
He got me on the train. He wears them every day. I love shoes in general, so I have a lot of different shoes. I have like 4 pairs of Chacos, but I have a lot of other shoes. Yeah, so he definitely led that
Okay.
parade.
Okay. And then, we ask people to show up kind of with props and think about it. And you've actually gone above and beyond because we're talking about Chacos, but here you are wearing an Eagles hat and you've got a disclosure shirt. So talk
Yes.
to me about the Eagles hat and Eagle fandom.
Yeah, Eagles fandom is a roller coaster. They are not always the best team. We had like one awesome year. But for me, it's really just about being in the community of being a Philadelphian and saying that like I'm a very proud Philadelphian, although I've lived in New York and Seattle, like Philly is my home, Philly's my roots, Philly's my people. My personality, my kind of East Coast zeal is because I'm a Philadelphian. And so that's what it signals to me.
And so I know a decent amount about Eagles because I have a bunch of friends who are from the Philly area, huge Eagles fans. So like I have definitely been guilty of chanting "Fly Eagles Fly" and EAGLES. I've done that for sure. What's the craziest thing you've done as an Eagles fan?
Oh man, I would say when we won the Super Bowl, I was living out here and I had gotten my wisdom teeth out the day before the Super Bowl. And so I was like chubby cheeked in so much pain. And I went to like an Eagles party because I was like, I'm not going to be not around Eagles people in Seattle on the Super Bowl day. And I just cried the whole Super Bowl. I was in so much pain from my wisdom teeth, but like I just had to be there and I had to be around these people. And not a lot of people like knew what was going on in the corner with me, but it was an emotional day.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty intense. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people who get out of bed after getting their wisdom teeth pulled and go be around a lot of people
Yeah.
in a situation where you might have lost, right? Like it might not have gone your way, and then it's insult to injury, right? Literally.
Yeah,
Feeling
absolutely.
that. So, and then like I think one of the things that I've learned from my Eagles fans is that there's like a culture of being Eagles fans that isn't necessarily understood outside of Philadelphia, right? Like,
Hmm.
I'll just say it. A lot of people who are not Eagles fans who play against the Eagles talk about, that stadium being a really challenging place to be because the fans are like pretty aggressive. Like, what is the culture of being an Eagles fan? Because I want to relate this a little bit to something you were talking about, which is the signaling, right? The identity that you take on, right? So when you become an Eagles fan, like what do you take on? What's part of that culture?
Yeah, it's a great point. We do get a bad rap for there was one time where an Eagles fan threw a battery at a Santa Claus. It's just that is um, what we give off, and I think that's definitely not the case when you're there. It's this idea of like brotherhood, which is something that is ingrained in Philadelphia as a whole, but you are there for your people to the death and you defend people, and sometimes that can go sour, depending on the situation, but it's just this kind of unspoken creed of love for each other. And I think that's what I feel anytime I'm in the city or, going through the airport and someone just yells "Go Birds" because they see my hat.
Yep. Yep. And are there aspects of it that you have a hard time affiliating with? Like, do you struggle? Like, I think you were talking about having the blinders with
Yeah.
respect to the Chacos. Is that also true as an Eagles fan?
Yeah, for sure. I think there is an aggressive side to a lot of Eagles fans. And although myself and a lot of my friends that are Eagles fans aren't that way, that is like a reputation that they get. When there's a parade, they grease the light posts because they don't want people to climb them, and they still do, which, I kind of like the tenacity in that. But,
Yeah. Right.
I think that's challenging.
And then you've got the disclosure shirt on. So we've
Yes.
got a brand, like an apparel brand. We've
Yeah.
got a sports team, and then we've got a band, right? So this
Yeah.
is like the triumvirate of fandom. These are these areas where we have lots of emotions. Like, talk to me about disclosure and why you're wearing that shirt and what catches you about them.
Yeah, so disclosure was when I graduated college, I was really into more of electronic music, and not a lot of my friends were at the time. But when I moved to New York, I had not really any friends and I was struggling to make friends. And one of the first ways I made friends was by going to shows with people. I would meet someone out and we would instantly start speaking about music, and we'd invite each other to shows and go to shows together. And at that time, I guess that was 2013, Disclosure was starting to blow up, and they had really emotive music. I'm very much someone, when I listen to music, I get chills. Like, I feel emotion so heavily through music, and Disclosure is a very emotive artist. And so it just became that kind of artist for me and my friends to listen to together. It's going to be my first dance song at my wedding. It just brings up a lot of good memories.
Got it. And when you are a fan of a band, are you a fan that listens to them and has other people, you introduce them to them? Are you a fan who's like following them on the road and going to as many shows as possible? Like, how does that show up for you?
Yeah, I very much listen to their music a lot. I will post them on social media to encourage other people to listen to them, send them to everyone I know. I don't really follow bands around the country. I like way too many bands to be able to do that. But whenever they're here, I'll drop what I'm doing and see them.
Do you have like alerts set up for them, like in Ticketmaster or whatever, so that's showing up for you? You're like, okay, they're going to be here, and then I'm on the pre-sale list, and I'm trying to get like 8 tickets for everybody, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
talk to me. Have you converted anybody because of your love of them and going to shows to becoming fans?
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, I was introduced to them from a friend, and now I've got a lot of my friends from home that really like them. And there's a lot of other bands where I will not rest until someone listens to them. Like, if I know someone will like it, I like pester them to listen. And then flash forward a year or two later, we'll be at a show together.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what happens for you? Like, what's the feeling you get when you've done that successfully? Because that evangelism, I think, is such an interesting part of activating a fan and their love. It's like you're evangelizing, you're bringing them along. So what happens for you? How can you express how you feel when somebody you know should be into it actually says you're right, and then goes to the show with you and is like, yep, this clicks?
Yeah, I think it makes our friendship stronger in a way, knowing that, like, for them to know that, like, I see them and I know them and I understand them, and that I take the time out of my day to like really make sure that they have a positive experience that I think they're going to have. And then it feels reciprocated to me. It's this nice cycle of getting to experience something I love with someone that I love, and then we can like build on that memory together.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, so we touched on 3 different types of like fandom for you, of like different, like a company, a sports team, and a band. And as we're going through this, I'm seeing some things that are linked between us. What would you connect across all 3 of those? Like, what's similar? What's the resonance there? Because I'd love to move into more of your philosophy around how you make brands that people love. So like, what are the threads that are connected for you?
Yeah, I think the common thread in all 3 of them is, well, there's 2 things I would say. One is a positive memory or experience, and then 2 would be a community. I think community is probably bigger than the first one, and just a sense of belonging to something like bigger than yourself.
Okay, all right. So that's really clarifying. That helps me understand it, because there's this for you, like an aspect of being part of a community and brand love that they're associated, right? Like, you're on Team Chacos, you and your partner have Chacos, multiple Chacos, you go out hiking, people see them, you have a dog thing. Of course, as a sports fan and as a concert, like a band fan, you're part of this community. Do you find yourself in those communities more often, like spending more time, being drawn back into it almost as a result? Like, how does it reinforce?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more, I'm very much someone who gets my energy from being social and being around people. So the more I will go to a concert and be around people enjoying music, the more I love it. Like, the more I'll come home and like binge listen to music more than like maybe a podcast or something. And so I think it reinforces that love a lot. And for brands too, where I think I get really excited about certain brands for a while, and then sometimes I can like be fleeting to another one. But if I have continued positive experiences, I'll stick with it longer.
That's really interesting, because I think I was asking this a little bit before about what would what has Chaco's ever done to maybe disappoint you? And it doesn't sound like they really have, but what would make you kind of fall out of love with a brand or a team or a band?
Yeah.
And I think I was hearing part of that is you might, spend less time. It might be a little bit fleeting. So, but what can they do? What would somebody do that would make you say, no, I'm done, I'm out?
Yeah. Yeah. I think from like the band perspective, it's really hard because you forget that they're people and they live real lives, but that is something that happens a lot, is something might come out about their personal life that doesn't really align with my values, or it's something that I can't really support. And I would very much walk away from being a fan of that band in that instance. From a brand perspective, I think kind of how they align themselves for the most part, I choose to be in the fan club of those brands because of how they align themselves. And if they were to alter that or come out and say that they support an organization that I might not really believe in or want to support, I would walk away.
Do you have any examples of where you've walked away? Because I like this.
Yeah.
I like to know the stories about like, this really, really upset me and frustrated me.
Oh gosh, I mean, from a brand perspective, I don't have one off the top of my head. From a musician perspective, there have been several musicians that I just absolutely adored their music and would go to shows, and then some allegations came out about, certain harassments or, mistreating employees, and I have genuinely stopped even listening to their music because I just feel so strongly that, we should treat everyone with kindness. So.
Do you feel like sharing a specific name or instance?
Yeah, I was a big Chris Brown fan.
Oh yeah, right.
And like that's a hard one. Like I will hear a Chris Brown song and it evokes these positive memories of being in college with my best friends. Like I drove from middle of Pennsylvania all the way to like the coast of Jersey to go to a Chris Brown and T-Pain show when I was in college. Like love that. And then all the stuff came out with him and Rihanna, and I just said, I just can't do it anymore. I don't support him.
I'm totally on board. I was listening to Chris Brown, and then that stuff came out and I was the same way. I'm like, this is not worth it. I don't feel good about it. I don't need to listen to it. Definitely don't need to give money and go to shows.
Yeah.
And I had that moment of like possibility with the Seahawks recently, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I asked you to be specific, so I'll be specific myself.
Please.
There were rumors that the Seahawks were going to trade for Deshaun Watson. And I'm a season ticket holder, been a fan ever since I was a kid. I grew up in the Seattle area. And I said to my fellow season ticket holders, if this happens, I'm out. I just don't want to give them my money. I don't need to be a part of this. And I'm glad that they didn't make that choice. But even the fact that they were dallying, that the rumors were there, still bothers me. It really upsets me because it's like you could hire so many different people, and this is where you might be going. It's just, I don't think that aligns at all. I don't want to cheer for that.
And that's like a really incredible point, because it makes me realize that being a fan comes with huge responsibility. And a lot of times you don't realize that responsibility that you have. You're like, oh, I'm just going to buy merch. I'm just going to wear this patch. But like you have the responsibility to represent that brand or band or team whenever you're out and about.
Yeah. Through that lens, how often are you conscious of that and thinking about it? Like, are you vigilant around this? Because I think many of us sort of take that for granted, and you can kind of push it away to the other side of your brain. And clearly you've thought about it with some people. Like, are you on a regular basis kind of vigilant about it?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Like down to a nuance level of, if I know someone's coming over and they might like a certain, type of food, or, they're really into this, that, or the other, I'll put it out on the table. Or if I know I'm going to go see someone and they really like Disclosure, I might wear my Disclosure shirt so we can have that thing to talk about. So very much so.
Are you a wear the band's t-shirt to the band concert person?
Oh, okay. See, that's a great question. I was having a debate about this the other day.
I think it's so interesting.
I would not do that, but you have to wear the sports team's merch when you go to the game. But right. I'm going to Disclosure tomorrow night, actually, and I will not be wearing the shirt. I feel like that's like dorky in a way.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on the opposite end. If I have a shirt from a previous concert, I wear it like until it's worn out. So I've been a Death Cab for Cutie fan for like 18 years probably now. Okay. And I had a shirt It was green. It had the Seattle skyline. I was living in San Francisco at the time when I went and saw them, and I got the shirt, and I was like, "Oh, it's beautiful, it's Seattle skyline." And I wore that shirt all the time in general until it had holes in it, really. But I wore that shirt to every Death Cab concert after that. And what ended up happening is the older the shirt got, the more people would come up to me and be like, "Man, that is a legit shirt. Like that is from like a decade ago. Oh, I love the Seattle skyline," you know? Because they kind of moved away from that piece of their identity. So for me, I was like, this just shows that I've been a fan for a long time.
Oh, you might be changing my mind. I think that that's really powerful, actually.
Yeah, I love that, right? Because I'm like, I've been here for a while, right? And that aspect of being here for a while, I take pride in, because look at all of you, many of you who just, found them. So I get that, like that pride, from being early.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool element of being a fan too, that I sometimes have to like stifle in myself, where I'm like, how do you all know that these people? Like, I've been around for forever. When people bandwagon a sports team or something, and I find myself almost getting territorial, but I think the reason I love being a fan is to be a part of a community. So you have to open your arms to that, but it's hard.
Yeah, there is a weird indignation, right?
Mhm.
Of like, I think that you guys are fans because the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. You didn't have to live through us wasting Steve Largen's talent. You didn't have to live through all those seasons of being in the AFC and getting our butts kicked. That was hard, right? And so there's like this indignation, but at the same time, I'm like, but you're all here making the stadium louder.
Yeah.
So we're more likely to win. So I'm really glad you're here. And balancing that, I find, is a little bit of a dance. And that's why I like your community idea around it, because I think the community mindset around it really is more encompassing and positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's shift into some of like your professional expertise around building brands that people love. Like working on creative design and brand strategy to help a brand really earn love.
Yeah.
Sounds to me like almost an insurmountable task. Like, where do you start?
Yeah, it's really tough, because you have to basically start by understanding who they're trying to speak to, because you can't start raving fans if you're speaking to the wrong person or speaking the wrong language, if you will. And so that's where brand strategy comes in, to really get to the crux of like who the consumer is, what they care about, what their values are, what matters to them, and like living and breathing that in a way. I think it's hard being in this industry of, you never want to put yourself as the consumer. I believe that, just because you get blinded. And so you have to always come from the lens of like, while I might share these values, like I'm really thinking of this kind of other persona.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where you have to start there. And then I think a logical next step is language, because like truth exists in language. And if you can get to the like nuts and bolts from a verbal perspective of, what the story is that's going to resonate with these consumers, then the visuals can flow from there, because you're going to have these like set of principles and characteristics that you can really ladder back to as you're going through that design process.
So tell us about a project where you did this, and walk us through kind of how you executed that. I'd love to learn more about the nuts and bolts of really doing that, because I think I now understand the framework. I'd love to kind of see it through your eyes about how you accomplished it.
Yeah, a good one that comes to mind, this was when I was at Retail Voodoo, which is where Madeline and I met, and it's an agency here in Seattle. And we were working with a brand called High Key. They make keto snacks, and they had so much passion. The client team there was incredible, and they wanted to grow their product offering extremely rapidly. And they came to us to say, hey, we've got a product pipeline of like 100 different snack foods. We got to press the gas quickly. Can you make us some packaging? We're like, wait. Let's like take a look. You're speaking to people who are on the keto diet, but like, this is pretty new. Like, what do we really know about that? And we did a lot of customer research to uncover that their audience and the people that were buying it were actually not these kind of like fitness is my life, my body is a temple type people. It was actually suburban people who every now and again want to like feel like their life is a little bit in control by eating something that doesn't have carbs in it. And so it was just this radical kind of explosion in their minds of like, oh my gosh, like we're talking to the wrong people. We have to kind of start from the ground up. And so that's what we did is we built them a language, we built them the whole brand story around where to take this and how to speak to them. And then we altered the packaging in a way that was a little bit more feminine. It was a lot more females than males purchasing it. And then it was just really cool to see it really grow because they knew who they were talking to and they were speaking their language. And they grew from just being a small DTC company now being at Costco and Target and so many other places. And so, yeah, I think that was a great journey.
That's really interesting. So like, we think a lot about giving customers a voice so that the brands that we work with can learn more about who their customers are, what they need, what their experience is like. And I think what I was hearing you say is you were really struggling to understand that customer. How did you get to the place where you're like, oh, it's not about the hardcore. Yeah. It's actually about the convenience of being able to do something that I like doing and makes me feel good. How did you get that voice of the customer to influence the decision-making and then the brand strategy?
Yeah, so what we did in that instance was we did a survey where it was 50% of the people we surveyed were from the High Keys email list. So we reached out to people who are actively participating in the brand by buying the product, signing up for their content. And then we did 50% of a randomized kind of gated survey where we said, okay, you have to have at least heard about the brand and you have to at least care about like a certain amount of like health metrics, basically, like you understand what macros are and things like that. And so it was this amalgamation of current loyalists and potential new customers that we were able to see kind of what their growth potential could be. But also you want to see where they currently are because you don't want to like leave their current loyalists behind as you grow.
And when you navigate that, broadening the tent, right, that the community can live under, and trying to bring the existing loyalists along while really massively expanding the opportunity, what decisions did you face along the way? Like what you did clearly broadened the opportunity and really grew the brand, and that's why they're showing up at all these other stores that they're available at now. But like, what decisions did you face along the way about staying true to the loyalists versus what things you were willing to change in order to broaden it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we realized along the way is there were certain partnerships that the brand had, certain influencers that they work with that no longer would be appealing to this audience, and they had to kind of break those partnerships and walk away and find new ones. That's a more tactical response. But then in general, I think it's a matter of shifting language, and everyone on the team needs to be all in. If you've got a couple team members on like the actual brand's side of things that are resistant and kind of have that like internal magnetic pull back to the way things used to be, you're never going to be able to really move forward. And so I think, and then one other thing I will mention is having small cues. So those people who have been fans of your brand for a long time that, hey, like we're not changing. We're just kind of like certain things are going to look different just so that they don't question the quality or like the consistency of the product.
Okay. So I think what I'm hearing you say is you got to maintain the quality and the consistency. Mm-hmm. Your delivery of the product or the experience. You have to, that piece is really an obligation, a promise you've made to the loyalists already. Yeah. So adhering to that, but the team has to be all in on the idea that we're going to move forward in order to open up to other people. So like, is that a fair way of thinking about it? It's like you have some tenets that you're married to around quality and consistency, but then the rest is kind of up for grabs? Yeah,
I think like a lot of times we refer to them as brand values. Some people call them brand pillars. There's different ways to speak to it, but we like to think of that as like your North Star. And if everything you do can kind of go back to those and everything you do hits on them, then have room to play and adapt to the feedback loop you're getting from your consumers as you grow. But if you stray from those values, the consumers will feel it and they'll walk away.
How do you keep a pulse on that? I mean, obviously sales tells you some things, but how do you keep a pulse on that set of brand values and the affinity and the emotion that people are feeling around it?
Yeah, in today's day and age, I mean, the feedback loop is almost too much, with social media being what it is and people commenting on things. And And then I think continually testing, continually doing small consumer research check-ins, kind of like some of those surveys I'd mentioned. I think that's really helpful. And then not like sticking to the course, I think is really important too. I've seen a lot of brands kind of get nervous that it's not working and try and go a different direction and not living, like giving it enough time to prove itself out.
What's enough time? When you're talking about a product like yours, right, where it's actually like a food, a physical good that people are buying and consuming, it's very different from a lot of what we talk about with respect to like digital. We are helping a lot of companies with digital experiences that might be serving food, but there's an experience that's digital that we're inherently involved in. But how do you think about the time expectations around that?
Yeah, it's a really tough one to know. I think it's different for every person, kind of where they're starting. You know, with High Tea as an example, we were working with them at a really great time where their passion was really just starting to escalate and their team was starting to grow. And so they grew, I think it was 9 months that they grew from being DTC to being in like some major big box retailers. Whereas other brands I've worked on, like, you know, we've seen a 3-year trajectory, but they stuck with it and it was really fruitful. So I think it depends on how much investment you're willing to put in and then where you are when you start.
Then when you're talking about the experience that you deliver to a customer and that you're changing, you know, maybe how you're showing up, I think you're talking a little bit about some of the packaging being more feminine and thinking about like the way you present to women who are the primary customer in this. Like, how do you think about physical packaging as a part of the brand and the story that's being told?
Yeah, I think from a package perspective, there's like the shelf presence, which now a lot of shelf presence is digital presence, you know, how it shows up on Amazon, and that's a lot to consider. So it's a little mix of like science and art. The science part is like hierarchy of elements. Basically, you are the scientist guiding the consumer's eyes to go where you want it to go. I want you to read this first. This is what you're going to care about first, so on and so forth. But then the art side comes in and like, okay, I need this person to feel calm. I need them to take a deep breath when they look at this packaging for skincare. Or I want them to feel nostalgic. Like right now, there's a huge trend in like Y2K, early 2000s, design and fashion coming back. And a lot of people are buying things because it makes them feel nostalgic for a younger era. And that's where the art and the emotion comes in. And that's all through like typeface, color, placement of photography, things like that. But yeah, it's kind of that mix.
And how do you get feedback on that? How do you test around that? Like we're always thinking about the smallest possible question set in order to get the highest response rate, so we have the best kind of understanding of customers. But again, because we work in digital, that's one of the advantages of digital. You know, you have this large audience that all could possibly be activated. Are you using digital in order to accelerate that and grow the number of people you can listen to? And if so, what's working for you?
Yeah, we're definitely using digital to understand like social media advertising or, you know, just sponsored posts and things like that is a really interesting way to just see what people are even clicking on, even if they're not purchasing it. Like what's almost the purchase intent or the excitement around this product, and what language speaks to them, because then some language we'll test digitally will end up on pack because people ended up clicking on it more. What are some other?
Okay. I think I understand what you said, but I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Using digital ads to test what copy is being clicked on can then elevate to that copy being on the packaging itself.
You got it. Yeah.
Super sharp. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of that? Like some copy that showed up that way? This is fascinating.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good example. I know I'm currently working with the brand Mommy's Bliss. They make like supplements for parents and for babies, and we're working on some campaigns with them. And we're using, you know, they're working internally on kind of revamping the brand while we're working on some campaigns. And some of the campaign language we're starting to see inform how they make claims on the package. So people don't necessarily want to just see like makes you happier. They want to see like elevates your mood, because it like already calms you when you say that and makes you happier is kind of like, well, I don't need you to make me happier. So like, that's a fun way that we're testing and learning.
That is really cool. That's really cool. And when you think about fandom and you think about community and you think about the kind of customer you are for a Chaco's, and then the brands that you're building, like what does it mean to have a strong community of rabid, I think you use the term stark raving fans.
Yeah.
What does that mean for the bottom line?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you really need to make sure that, I think startups as an example might come in and be like, I want to build what Nike has, where people are getting swooshes tattooed on their body. And you're like, okay, we need to, start slow and grow. But I think when you have that loyal fan base, I'm going to give an example of something I saw this week. So Hailey Bieber, hugely famous. Everyone loves her. She's America's sweetheart right now. She's launching a skincare brand. And she has the right to claim an extremely high price for that skincare brand because everyone loves her. They want their skin to look like her. They're going to pay whatever she says they need to pay. Even if they don't have that money, they're going to do it. And I think if you have that clout and cachet, you can command a premium price point. Therefore, your bottom line is always going to be, succeeding. But I think you have to prove it out first. You need almost like a guarantee that people are willing to pay that premium.
Right. So that's an unusual place to start from. You have to usually have to work up to that or have some advantages to get you there.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Well, this has been super, super interesting and informative to me. I think that the notion of community really resonates, and learning about 3 different things, the brand that you love, whether it was Chaco's or the Eagles or Disclosure, and community being the resonance there really, really, makes a lot of sense to me. Any other advice you would leave our listeners in terms of trying to create a brand that people love that we haven't touched on or really gotten into for you?
Yeah, I think in general, if you can, create that emotional connection through language, I think that's going to be really important. Make someone feel seen and heard in whatever they're going through in their life. It will definitely stop them in their tracks. Don't necessarily follow the trends. That could work for some people, but think of a brand as something that you're going to want to wear, like your Death Cab. I think, pardon me if it wasn't Death Cab, your Death Cab t-shirt you want to wear for forever. A brand should be like that. And sure, trends come and go, but if you're following the trends, you are likely to not create those lifelong fans.
That's really valuable. Kat, I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah.
Where can people find you and connect with you if they want to learn more and become a fan of yours?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I'm Kat, K-A-T Simpson. And I always love messaging people, even if it's, just quick little message about hey, what do you think about this? I'm always happy and open to talk to people. So definitely find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Awesome. You're going to create some more fans with that kind of generosity and openness to creating your own community. So we will include some links in the show notes, and I want to encourage our listeners to check out the resources we're going to put there if you want to dive in deeper on any of the topics we discussed today. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and give us a rating. www.ratethispodcast.com/CLS. That's CLS for Customer Love Stories. So we can get some feedback and continue to make this podcast better and more valuable for our fans. We wish you all the best and hope you continue to deliver customer love in everything you do. Cheers.
Thank you.